Sudbury.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I'm very proud to be here to talk about the budget, Bill G85. This is a weird thing to talk about because I have stuck in my head the quote, and I forgot to write it down, but how this budget is like getting a pack of tube socks. how it's an adequate mediocrity. It's a white tube socks. Thank you to the member from Brampton North. You know, because it's there. It's not. You know, nothing to get excited about. But there's a lot of things missing in this budget, and I think that's really what stands out about it is the absence of what people really want in the budget. I think our leader Merit Stiles, when she said, you know, the budget fails to meet the moment, that's pretty accurate. It fails to meet the moment. I don't know. I know we're very busy at Queen's Park in debate. I know we're very busy as MPPs in general, and I hope that my colleagues from the Conservative Party, Speaker, I hope they're able to get out in the community and talk to average people. And I'm sure many of them do, but I think the conversations they're having are different than mine. They're different than mine. Because what I've been hearing since the end of last winter, definitely in the spring, all through the summer, specifically during the election, was that people are having a hard time making ends meet. That people really, really are struggling to make ends meet. They see it as a situation where themselves or their kids can't afford rent, never see owning a house in the future. When they're doing groceries, they're putting food back, or they're simply going to food banks. Feed Ontario was here last Monday, Speaker, to tell us. I remember when I was first elected in 2018, they were here and told us we hit a tipping point where working families were accessing food banks at a higher rate than non-working families. And then the usage of food banks by working people and seniors in retirement, and just everyone is falling behind. The food banks aren't supposed to be part of the system. They're supposed to be the stopgap until the government fixes the system, and now it's become this situation that people rely on. It stuns me when I hear about the billions of dollars in the contingency fund, this kind of sludge fund, the rainy day fund, I heard it called this. And I said earlier today, it is pouring rain, Speaker. It is pouring rain.
Absolutely.
It is pouring rain. And if you aren't aware of it, I talk to some people who are homeless, who are living in these 10 cities where it's been pouring rain on them. Talk to the seniors who are desperate for any sort of work, or who are standing at street lights panhandling because the meager incomes, the fixed income they have isn't there, or people on OW or ODSP or minimum wage workers. Talk to anyone, and they're going to tell you it is pouring rain. The turning point for me was this summer after the election in my office, hearing from people telling me, I'm relatively affluent, but I just went for groceries and I don't know how people can afford to do this. Typically, I don't hear from people saying I'm worried about somebody else. I hear about people saying I need help. But we're at a level of crisis where people are recognizing that it is simply unaffordable for the majority of the people in this province to make ends meet. And I'm not talking about luxury items. I'm talking about food. I went for groceries last week, and Gouging Gale and Weston had a special on bread. 2 loaves of bread for $8. 2 for $8. It was more if you bought one. I've been buying groceries for a long time. It floats about $2, depending, you know, if what kind of bread you're getting. And sometimes you get a special; it's $1.89 or something. So you $2.50. 2 for $8, and the government comes forward with kind of like a milquetoast budget. I know that word specifically is milquetoast, but I was thinking of milk soaking or bread soaking in milk, and now like. You know, you could eat it, and it's probably got some nutritional value, but no one's really excited to do that. But it is pouring rain. There's a list of things. I'm just going to name the things that I'm frustrated with in this, but I really believe our role is to amplify the voices of the people we represent. I was very disappointed not to see Highway 69 even mentioned in this, except for the fact that the Conservative Party, very happy they didn't cancel the work that was in progress. But Doug Ford, the Premier, he promised he was going to finish this. Not 1 cent, one movement towards this. People are still dying on Highway 69, not important to the Conservative government. NOSM, Northern Ontario School of Medicine, where we need doctors. Yes. Nothing about NOSM in here. Laurentian University, remember the crisis, CCAA, 200 people lost their jobs, all kinds of crisis. Nothing about Laurentian University, nothing about clean drinking water. I mean, lots of excitement about expanding mining in the north, and I think that's excellent, but we still have areas in Northern Ontario where they have boiled water advisories. We could chip away at that. Think of what you could do as a Conservative Party if you said Justin Trudeau had dropped the ball, but look what we did for clean drinking water.
That's true.
Just imagine that. Don't do it for them, do it for you. Whatever, I don't care how we get it done, what motivates you, but let's get it done. It's embarrassing that we boil drinking water. No funding about hospice. There's an interest, well, actually there is some. There's 23 new beds. I had to add the 500 existing ones. I was at hospice on Friday. Good friend of mine, Marcel Charon, is in hospice. His family's very worried about him. He's been battling cancer for 5 years and was recently moved into hospice. But I went to hospice there, Maison McCulloch Hospice in Sudbury. I've never heard anyone criticize the work they do. Amazing work that they do. But I found out that there is no government funding for food at the hospice. And there's no government funding for the people who prepare the food. They have to fundraise for that. People at the end of their life who are waiting to die, the family supporting people who are going to die, who are terminal, and there is no funding to feed those people who are in those beds. And the same with the cleaning. No funding for cleaning or cleaning products. There are legislation, when you talk about red tape, there's legislation telling them exactly what cleaning products they have to buy with the money they fundraise, but there's no funding to pay for it or for the people who clean it.
Oh, man.
That's not in this bill. Opioids. City of Sudbury, the number two, Thunder Bay passed us. Thanks for nothing. Thunder Bay got worse than Sudbury did. Provincial government on the hook for $1.1 million to fund a supervised consumption site. Premier couldn't reach his wallet last year. He can't do it again this year. That money is going to be downloaded to the municipalities. $1.1 million. Bill 23, the developer fees downloaded to municipalities all across the province, Speaker. About $1 billion province-wide. Taxpayers are going to see that in their property taxes that go up because municipalities can't run a deficit. In Health Sciences North, there's some talk about hospital funding and stuff, but Health Sciences North was built too small. I went for a tour with a member from Nickelbelt, their health critic, of Health Sciences North, and we wandered through, and we saw the hallway medicine, and we were told that these are now funded beds. A bunch of places we can take photos because people were in the hallways, and we wanted to respect their dignity. But now these are funded beds because the shower rooms, the staff rooms, the TV rooms, and literally people in the hallways are now counted as funded beds.
Good God.
It literally looked like wartime. This is how they've been running. This isn't COVID. This is how it was when I was elected. I went for a tour in 2018. I want to share some of the stuff. I said it was raining. Joanne had sent in an email to me. So Joanne is 64. I work in community looking after special needs. I am classified as part-time like many workers, so I don't get any benefits. I'm living on survival wages. I take 6 medications, including insulin. I'm making choices of food over medication. With rent, food, gas, and regular bills all increasing, I can't keep up, and I can't sleep. It is raining out there for people, Speaker. For Hansard, I'll handle these in afterwards so you don't have to worry about the spelling of anything. The OFL's response, and I know sometimes you don't want to listen to the OFL, but they do represent literally millions of workers. So in terms of workers, if you want to be the Working for Workers Party, the OFL calls this budget another missed opportunity to address the hardships facing working people in the province. Stagnant wages, weak working conditions, crumbling public services, unaffordable basic goods, housing and rent, and rising economic inequality. The Conservative government has touted this budget as staying the course. Meanwhile, Ontarians are losing access to health care, while the Premier underfunds and privatizes our public services. Workers shouldn't have to pay for crises they didn't create. The budget is about priorities, and the Conservative government has the wrong ones, and enough is enough. We need a government that invests in workers and public services, not one that helps the rich get richer at our expense. The OFL articulates a bold and progressive vision for Ontario with the Enough campaign, which includes demands such as, and this is stuff we should be striving to get together in government as decent working conditions, easier access to join a union, strong public services, economic equality, affordable housing, and healthy communities for everyone. This isn't a radical idea. This is what people in your communities want. Another thing they like, not specifically budget-related, but like anti-scab legislation.
Yes, indeed.
We brought that in. You like to criticize about Bob Ray. Bob Ray brought in anti-scab legislation. Mike Harris removed it. One of the first things they did, removed it. The Liberals promised for 15 years they would do it, but I guess they had other things to do. They never got around to it. I spoke today at question period, Speaker, about these ferry workers and how, for some reason, the Conservative government is content to spend the replacement workers, what we call scab workers, replacement workers 2 to 3 times what they pay these normal workers. Why not negotiate a deal? If you got the money for these scab workers, just pay these workers.
Absolutely.
It's a ridiculous thing to do. I mentioned autism earlier when we were in my colleagues' debate asking questions about autism. Sean wrote to my office, he said, sufficient funding. I asked him what he would want. Sufficient funding and additional resources to clear the backlog of 60,000 Ontario autistic children who are waiting for support. My 3-year-old nonverbal autistic son just received his autism assessment. We're in a race against time to get him the support he needs to battle his diagnosis. His mother and I are praying to be able to one day speak to us. Without the help of the government, he may never speak or be able to live a fulfilled life. Please help us, and there are 60,000 kids waiting on their government's help. Nancy said ideally autism treatments should be covered by OHIP, otherwise autism funding. Today when I called and asked for a status update on the funding for our son, there is a wait list, and they can't tell us where we are on the list. They don't know when any new funding will become available. No plan, no transparency, no details. Today they are processing applications from 2017. Our application was made in 2019. Why is this so hard? In terms of post-secondary, Fabrice wrote to me. Fabrice is the president of Laurentian University Faculty Association. He said, appropriate funding of the post-secondary sector in Ontario. For more than a decade, the Ontario per-student funding over time in current dollars constantly decreased. Also, according to data from OCUFA, in the Canadian context, Ontario's per-student funding levels now sits at 43% behind the rest of the country. In 2019-20, the last year which data is available, the average level per-student funding in Ontario was $7,425 compared to $12,930 for the rest of the country. You talk about supporting workers and being successful. Who do you think is paying for the tuition for these kids?
Absolutely.
He also would like a full severance pay for all employees and faculty members terminated at Laurentian University as a result of the CCAA proceedings. The report of the Auditor General of Ontario and the unsealing correspondence between former President Haché and the MCU prior to the CCAA clearly demonstrated that recourse to the CCAA was strategically planned and used to circumvent provincial legislation and labour law. Getting away from post-secondary regular education, Rick, he's from Elgin, Middlesex, London. People sent in stuff from all different writings. My husband and I are both work in education. We only get about $1 raise after being frozen at 1% for 3 years. On top of years of no increase or very minimal, we work full-time and can't afford our bills. I'm stressed and anxious about bills every single day. Debbie, who's my colleague from Ottawa Centre's writing, says we need to invest in education, public, not private, for the future of our province. Class sizes has also been increasing, which does not help students. I want students to be successful and get sports, including mental health they need, and not further cuts. Libraries came up. Marzio said, restore the provincial library grant, which was reduced by over 50% by the Harris government, and it was never restored. Libraries have been struggling ever since. Rural and remote libraries, especially Northern Ontario, have been especially hit hard. I was the chair of the Federation of Ontario Public Libraries. I've seen rural and remote libraries struggling. Conservatives cut funding. Liberals did not restore it. The Harris cut is an injustice perpetrated on people who are struggling, but it seems to be forgotten by many. Lots on housing. Jessica from Nickelbelt said, investing in condo-style co-op geared to income housing with a focus on one-bedroom units. This is a great suggestion. It's the right time for provincial investment in housing during a tent encampment unhoused people epidemic. She grew up in co-op housing in Minnow Lake. I was an only child raised by a single mom, and the co-op afforded me a level of stability. And this resonates with me. I grew up in Sudbury housing, geared to income housing. So unfortunately, living situation did not remain tenable with my mom. She was forced to leave before she started college, and extended the time and debt I took on to go to school. And as anyone who has been in poverty knows, the problems are cyclical. It's hard to work enough to support yourself around your class schedule and pay rent. I often missed school, or I was too exhausted to be there and stay awake. I was sleeping between classes in my car, or I didn't have time to complete labs. If I had stable housing from the get-go, I know I could have started my life earlier and with less debt. I've broken out of the cycle of poverty I was raised in and could not have done it without Palace Place Co-op, which gave me a start where I could learn, play, and grow safely. I'm so certain when I tell you one more stress or unfortunate event or systematic factor would have made my current life impossible, and I think about this whenever I see the tent encampments in Memorial Park. It's a homeless encampment. I want to know that we provide all Ontarians with a chance, not just the ones with wealthy, stable, supportive families. When it comes to health, Karen from Etobicoke Lakeshore said, I would like to see investment away from private health care back into public health care. Getting access to my family doctor has been harder than ever. The people in my life have been telling me that it's taken days to try and get any kind of appointment, even just to fill a prescription. And when they go to their appointment, they're sometimes waiting hours on end for their doctor. Meanwhile, they're being told if they pay $30 a month, they get a better access. The PC government disregards us, the people, in favour of their corporate friends. Debbie, again, from my friend's riding. More money for healthcare and education. Our healthcare system is failing. It needs money, not privatization. Tammy from Nickel Belt says more resources in healthcare and blood work. I suffer from many health issues and have numerous specialists caring for me. The yearly blood work goes up in price and is constantly costing me more and more. This needs to stop. No one goes to blood work just because. When I have to pay for this, it becomes a choice, food or blood work. Rob from Chatham-Kent, Leamington. Healthcare, vision care, dental care, mental care, pharmacare, physio, chiro. I am dealing with pain and I can't afford to have it treated. ODSP. Kyle asked a question about Kyle earlier. He's trying to get by on a measly $1,220 a month. He said, more programs do not make for more solution. As I responded to my last letter, he was responding to the minister who replied to his question. I called the increase in those programs Band-Aid solutions, and Band-Aids have adhesives that eventually wear off. The minister's answers wore off immediately and disappointed thousands of Ontarians who were hoping for a change for the better. Melissa says, my son is autistic and an adult, and there's very little support in the Premier's Ontario for him, the Conservative Ontario, I guess. Not only has the wait list for autistic children ballooned and none of the promised support has returned, ODSP does not cover for market value rent. My severely autistic son would be homeless if anything happens to me. Alicia talks about ODSP. I would like to be able to live more comfortably month to month with the rise of living costs and groceries. Jane says, my story is far from unique. She's from Newmarket, Aurora. I reside in a Conservative riding. ODSP does not provide adequately for housing, water, or food, and my health has deteriorated over the last 10 years of being unable to afford health care for things that wouldn't have been an issue, except for the 10 years of starvation and undrinkable water in my community. Jade says doubling of ODSP because it's shameful that Ontario does not provide disabled people enough for even basic living. Most people's rent alone is more than an ODSP payment. Jill from Mississauga Lakeshore, yes, I'm on ODSP. Studio apartments or even just the cost of being someone's roommate exceed the total ODSP monthly amount. I'm scared and anxious. I don't want to become homeless. Where are we supposed to live? I have more on ODSP, but I want to make sure that I have time to get to not-for-profits. Angels of Hope sent this in. They said, Angels of Hope, they help with human trafficking. Excellent, excellent job. They're being recognized next week. We'd like to see more sustainable long-term funding for survivors of human trafficking. If more funding and support is not provided to community-based organizations, survivors can easily be brought back into sexual exploitation of trafficking because they have no services, do not trust the current criminal legal system. There's also a need for alternative forms of justice and accountability that are survivor-centered, community-based, and healing focused, such as restorative, transformative, and Indigenous justice. These funds would help us increase our capacity and assist/support more survivors of human trafficking in Ontario and work on prevention workshops and initiatives to reduce human trafficking, gender-based violence, and increase community safety. In terms of challenges, I was told we're not getting a sustainable funding for long periods of time, so we can't keep staff with expertise, limited capacity to take on more clients, and clients are not bouncing from multiple workers. This is an ongoing thing for not-for-profit, Speaker, where they're always applying for funding, looking for funding, and they can't keep the qualified staff that they have because of the wages that they have and the fact that it's always the funding is running out, the funding is running out. People can't afford to live like that. SWEAC says the same thing. Sudbury Workers Education Advocacy Centre. What would you like to see in the budget? They have three things, and because I have less than a minute. Increase of funding for legal aid and legal aid clinics. Currently, the clinics are barely able to meet the demands upon them. Increase of funding for the Landlord and Tenant Board for the Human Rights Tribal. Both of these organizations are backlogged because of budget cuts. And number three, not a strict budget measure, but impacting economically. We need paid sick days so people can afford to take time off when they're sick and be able to pay for rent. 30 seconds, Sudbury Women's Centre. I would like to see more stable funding as organizations like myself on a yearly basis constantly worried at year-end what I will be doing with staff. Most of our funding is yearly, and I spend more time applying for various grants. We currently have 8 grants, and we are waiting for approvals on. We're at risk of losing 75% of our staff, which in turn affect our community and the services that they receive. We all know that the demand has increased, and losing funding and programs will create more issues. Gives me 3 seconds to say thank you, Speaker, but I have so much more that I could share from across the province on what should be in this budget and what people are asking for. We need more than just tube socks. Thanks.
Thank you. For the debate, the member from Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
Thank you very much, Madam.
Sorry, questions. I apologize. Questions.
Just pulling up my socks here for a lovely pair of socks. You know. Want to thank the member for his comments, and it was great to get to his community and the Finance Committee meetings during the pre-budget consultations. And I want to ask about health. You know, there's so many measures in this budget, from staffing, many measures on health staffing, from 6,000 healthcare students, internationally educated nurses and docs, learn and stay, our community plan for a convenient, connected and convenient care, such a practical program. But the funding, $15.3 billion more over 3 years, $81 billion of healthcare funding in 23-24. I want to ask the member, through you, Madam Speaker, surely is not that funding, the huge record funding in health care for Ontario, enough to have you support this budget?
Thank you. Response?
Yeah, thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member from Bruce Grey, Owen Sound. I'm always leery of the funding. I was excited when I was first elected when I heard the budget, but then I would hear the FAA report about what was actually spent. And so the devil's in the details. I welcome any funding towards healthcare. I think it's important, but you need to recognize the fact that Bill 124, which is basically dead, you guys lost, you're going to lose again. Why you're appealing is beyond me. Bill 124 is chasing workers away. If you own a bathtub, turn both taps on full blast. Those are the workers you're hiring. Now pull the plug. That's actually what's happening with healthcare. People are rushing out the door. As quickly as you bring people in, you are losing the most experienced workers who cannot wait to get as far away from you guys as they can. That's the root of it. We need to retain and attract so we can really solve these problems with healthcare.
Thank you. Questions? The member from Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas.
Thank you, Speaker. You've said and we've said that this budget failed to meet the moment, and I would say that this budget failed no one greater than they failed seniors in this province. I mean, we know the context. We know that seniors living in long-term care continue to exist where there's orders that aren't being enforced. We know that emergency rooms have been closed in this province. This is, emergency rooms that seniors might turn to. There's no true rental protections which includes seniors, and there could be nothing even more, miserly, if I have to say, than a government now that is reducing seniors' ability to have eye exams. I mean, really, it's now seniors. Even if you have cataracts, the standard is that you have to have clinically significant decreased vision that impacts your daily life. That's the standard. So can you explain or say how you feel about how this budget failed to meet the moment when it comes to our seniors?
Thank you. Response?
Thank you, Speaker. The short story is yes, it did. It failed to meet the moment. Most seniors are on a fixed income. We all know that. We all know seniors and care about seniors. They're on fixed incomes, reducing things like their access to glasses and saying that it's more valuable to have young people have access. It's more valuable for people to have access to health care in general. I had perfect vision. I have LASIK now, but I have to go get glasses again. As you get older, your vision typically gets worse. Taking away vision from seniors is just unbelievable to me, especially, so many seniors, even if it's your vision so you could read, the pleasure that a lot of seniors have to be able to read and visit libraries, and check labels and check prices because they can't afford to make ends meet is so important. I don't know why they would take this away from them.
Question? The member from Mississauga, Erin Mills.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I really like the question about the eye vision and seniors and all the backlog we see in the people who need the eye surgeries. And actually, by allowing more outlets, more centers to perform operations, we can clear that backlog faster. And it's, again, like as we mentioned, it's not, as they keep saying, it's privatizing, because nobody will pay using his credit card. Everybody's paying with OHIP. We are just trying to create extra locations where the operation can be performed and clear out the backlog. So can the member in the opposite tell me why you are objecting to clear and make life easier for seniors?
Response.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker, and thank you as well to the member opposite. The private clinics, private for-profit clinics, it's being touted as a way to bring procedures forward, but we have surgical suites that are publicly funded that are available, but the funding for the procedures caps out. And so what it means is that at Health Science North, for example, they stop doing procedures at about 4 or 5 p.m. depending what day, and on the weekends there's even less. What we could do is we could fund more workers so they could do, and more procedures so they can do it 24 hours a day. Think about if you're mowing your lawn. Your lawn needs to be mowed. You do the front half yourself because you own a lawnmower. Instead of the back half, you hire a private contractor. You pay him to buy a lawnmower, and you pay him to hire somebody else and the top up on top of it. You still get your lawn mowed, but it costs you a lot more money for the back lawn than the front lawn, and that's what we're saying. Just get the privatization out. It doesn't matter that it's paid by OHIP. You're paying more through OHIP. You're wasting taxpayers' money by doing that.
Thank you. Question? The member from Ottawa Centre.
Well, thank you, Speaker. I just want to say for the record that my friend from Sudbury was absolutely based to cite the language of young people back in Ottawa Centre. I loved your discussion of gouging Galen Weston. $8 for 2 loaves of bread. And, you know, I look at Oxfam International. Oxfam International has recently told us that every single second, actually, the 5 largest energy companies on the planet are making a profit of $2,600 per second. Okay? And that we actually have now 62 food billionaires, you know, that have been created in this pandemic. Remember, I'm wondering what this government has done to ask the super rich, like gouging Galen, to pay their fair share so seniors and low-income people can get a break.
Response.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member for Ottawa Centre. You know, when you're talking about gouging Galen Weston, you know, my younger son is vegan, and so there's very few types of popcorn that don't have butter in them or something that doesn't match being vegan. And this one brand he really likes. If I'm at Shoppers, if I'm at one of the Loblaws locations, it's always $7 or $8. If I go to another grocery store, a smaller chain, it's about $4. You cannot tell me it's supply chain issues when it's one of the largest organizations. You cannot tell me that it's COVID related. The only thing that makes sense to me and to working people across this province is they're getting ripped off. And they're desperately waiting for the Conservative government to stand up and say enough is enough. The Premier said several times, if you see gouging, let me know. How has he not seen it? How has not everyone seen it? And nothing ever happens because it's always about the Premier's wealthy and well-connected friends, Speaker.
Question. The member from Mississauga, Erin Mills.
I still would like to follow up on my last question about the laser surgery for eye surgeries, because I don't know what's new in that. Like my dad, who passed away about 9 years ago, he already did his cataract surgery in a private clinic, and we paid using OHIP. Like, we didn't pay anything. It just, we went, got an appointment, got the surgery done. We didn't pay a penny for that. Actually, the clinic which we did this surgery in is in College Street, about maybe 500 meters from Parliament. That's 11, 12 years ago. So I don't understand why this big thing, especially after COVID, and we have a backlog and we are trying to clear it. Again,
question.
Can you please explain to me?
Response.
Speaker, a very similar question last time about the private surgeries, private clinics. I was sitting in on committee for G60, this bill, so they can privatize and put more money into their wealthy friends' pockets. On this bill, time and time again, we were told you're going to pay with your credit card and it can't be abused. And then time and time again, people would come forward. They would say 3 things. 1, I was never consulted or asked. 2, oh yeah, there's upselling all the time. It happens all the time. It happens all the time because a doctor says, well, you could get this, but I recommend this, and we believe doctors and trust them. So it happens all the time. And the third one is, I don't know why you're doing this when we can do this faster, cheaper, more effectively through the public option. And the only thing that makes sense to me is, well, when you sell off private services, it makes a lot of people rich. When you sell off the 407, it makes people rich. When you sell off Hydro One, it makes a lot of people rich. And you know who pays a lot more for it?
Response?
The public. The regular taxpayers pay a lot more money for it.
Thank you.